Covenant of Mayors in Sub-Saharan Africa is the African regional chapter of the Global Covenant of Mayors, which is a network of over 9,000 cities who are taking ambitious climate action. In Sub-Saharan Africa, this chapter has about 200 cities from 35 countries. And since I think 2015, the Covenant of Mayors is working with signatory cities, counties, municipalities in different countries on sharing good practice and supporting climate action. CoM has different partners, so us as GIZ, for example, but also Expertise France, IFD, the French Development Bank, and ICID, which is the Spanish Development Agency, who are partners of the CoM, and we work with signatories on climate-related planning, on project development, and also knowledge exchanges such as this one. CoM is supported by a secretariat and a help desk for all the signatory cities. And for more information, you're always welcome to reach out to the help desk for any information about joining the Covenant of Mayors or knowing more. This webinar is part of Conversations with CoM, which will be a webinar series that will then be continued by the help desk and the secretariat of the CoM on different topics and different sectors of relevance for cities and local governments in Sub-Saharan Africa. So maybe a bit of background on why we are doing this particular webinar today. So solid waste management has been one of the top issues for most of the cities and local governments that we have spoken to in the CoM project. However, over the years, we've also found that there are a lot of good practices that are already happening on the ground, but we don't hear about these projects very often that come from different countries across the region. So recently, as in the spirit of exchanging knowledge and exchanging best practices, we prepared this compilation of case studies along with Gopa in tech, so Harrison and their team on this call, who will be speaking very shortly, that highlights a few good practices and few case studies of waste projects that were done well in Sub-Saharan Africa. And so the purpose of this webinar is also to begin a conversation on this and introduce to you this short report. It's not so long, it's about 30 pages, which covers a few case studies. And after the introduction to this report, we will also have interventions from two other partners. So one is from Sierra Leone, from the Bo City Council in Sierra Leone, and we also have UN Habitat, who are supporting different cities in different areas of waste management that we will hear from. How the webinar will work is that we have recorded the speeches of the presenters, which will be played to you shortly. So the first 30 to 40 minutes will be interventions from the three speakers. While the speakers are presenting, I invite you to write your comments and questions in the chat. So after the interventions, we will then move into a Q&A session. And as you see, I think French subtitles should still be working on your screens while I talk, and it will remain the same while we have the presentations. Without much further ado, I think we can start with our first presentation. Is from Mr. Harrison Quach. Harrison has over 30 years of rich experience in designing and implementing innovative water, sanitation, and waste management for cities. His experiences traverses Africa, Asia, Latin America, including conflict and post-conflict urban centers, with a focus on low-cost waste solutions. He was previously the head of the Waste Management Support Project for Cities in the Weltunga Rilfe Sierra Leone Country Program, and he also served as the urban waste focal person at UN Habitat in Nairobi. Since 2019, he is a freelance consultant where, among other projects, he's also a waste management specialist with Gopa Tech on the GIZ CoM program. Harrison holds a degree in geography and sociology from the University of Nairobi, and he's currently working towards his MSc in sustainable urban development. Harrison was one of the authors of this waste management case study report. So now I welcome his presentation to introduce the report and the case studies.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Harrison Kwach. I'm a waste management expert, and I'm inviting you to this presentation so that we share the experience and so lessons that have been documented in a report, which is already here with us, and which we invite you to get to know more about what is happening in sub-Saharan African countries in regards to solid waste management. Waste management is one of the most challenging urban services cities are providing around the world. It has high capital and operational expenses, and also contribute greatly to greenhouse gas emissions. A number of studies have already reported the increasing volumes that are generated in the cities. And in sub-Saharan Africa, more prominently, it is reported to be one of the highest waste generators in the years to come. And this is due to a number of problems that I've already highlighted here that you can see. And you'll agree with me that waste composition and quantity is a reflection of changing lifestyle, consumption patterns and affluence in the cities and region. And for this matter, the quantities continue changing over time as lifestyles continue changing too, with the implication on the value chain and how to handle every kind of waste that come along. But the good news is that favorable policies at national levels and at the international level, we already have treaties and even strategic goals that cities and countries are compelled to change their strategies of handling waste from the old linear way of collecting and dumping, and to adopt a much more greener economy model, which is a circular economy system. And this is what is propagated in the globally accepted integrated solid waste management model. I won't go much into this triangular integrated waste management model because a lot of you have already seen this for a while. But what I'm saying is that the following best practices that I'm going to share are much more embedded into and draw their strategy from this model. The first case study is the livelihood from waste, and I call it the transformational model. And this is based on a case study of a small community-based enterprise that was formed in Nairobi in 1991. And this enterprise drew membership or participants from communities that were living in the dump sites and transformed them into a business enterprise. And in the process of implementing this project, the involved communities were made to specialize in waste collection and recycling low-cost technologies. It improved the skills of membership in waste sorting so that they're known by polymers and their types. And for this skilled sorting, it made it possible to market various waste types on their own. And in order to for the CBO to work as well as a normal waste business enterprise, they entered into MOUs, and they were formalized through agreements and through authorization by various sectors in the city, including City Council of Nairobi, so that they're recognized and formalized. And due to this process, they were able to earn Best Practice Award during the World Habitat Day 1999 as a good example. And I'm saying this is one of very low kind of enterprises that have come up from scratch to a level that would be recognized at global level, and therefore an example that CoM cities could emulate. Second business case is drawn from Liberia, a small country in the West African region. Liberia as a country emerging from the long civil war and Ebola scourge, all the systems were kind of run down, and therefore there was no proper structure to run waste management services in the cities. However, the responsibility of managing solid waste by law is rested upon the city corporations and therefore the responsibility of city authorities. While Tunga Ilfa is an international NGO from Germany working in Liberia to support basic services, it introduced the integrated solid waste management model in the cities of this within the southern eastern region of the country, and the model is a successful business case that is drawn from the neighboring country Sierra Leone, and I'm happy that this the Sierra Leone case will be presented in this meeting, but the logic behind this hierarchical model is that you start small as a pilot scale and cascadingly grow outwardly to full scale, and then you roll out experiences from the full scale on demand to other cities. And because of that demand, it has the impact to also influence the national policy and national government for adoption as a national program. The pilot cities are relatively small with 40,000 population size, but of course the wider picture is that the best performance in the smaller city is easier to be seen and be emulated by others and create demand at national level. What we are learning from this is that solid waste management sector has a diversity of stakeholders, but of course the responsibilities with the local government as by law in various countries. But I was saying that local government should adopt integrated solid waste management model to promote inclusivity. But then there has to be enabling environment to create demand-driven business environment that can attract local stakeholders and businesses, and that is based on appropriate policies and political goodwill. The public-private partnership model, I'm not going to touch much more on this because this is going to be much elaborated in the presentation from both City Council that is following after this. But what I want to say here is that the model is critical because it helps the city authority to spread out responsibility of waste management service delivery across the sector stakeholders. The regional partnership is also another level that is critical in helping to conserve a natural resource base which is shared across various borders. And in this case, I'm using an example of Lake Victoria Basin. One of the largest freshwater lake in Africa, in the world is. The Lake Victoria Basin is having over 45 million people in its catchment, and their daily activity produce waste that goes into the lake and compromises the quality of the waters. What the Lake Victoria Basin has done is to form a regional coordination body called Lake Victoria Basin Commission. And Lake Victoria Basin Commission draws its membership from the 5 East African countries. That platform has been used to conserve the lake. And one of the projects that has come along within that respect is the Lake Victoria Water and Sanitation Initiative. I know UN Habitat is already represented here, but this is an initiative that was spearheaded by UN Habitat way back in 2004, and which drew its membership from the first 3 countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, with the initial funding from the Dutch government. But because of the success of phase 1, it developed a business case that attracted investment for multinational financing institution, the African Development Bank. And all the countries were able to also co-contribute into the funding to ensure that there was enough resources to see it through. What we're learning from this section is that the regionalism approach made it possible to attract multilateral funding. And the focus on Lake Victoria Basin for collective response by regional governments to conserve the lake was able to leverage political will from all the cities, all the involved countries, that they worked together towards a common cause. And the establishment of Lake Victoria Basin Commission to champion the coordination process became advantageous for this to go through. The low-cost waste recycling initiative linking income generation and employment creation to solid waste management. This is a circular economy approach, which is also one critical aspect that is promoted by the integrated solid waste management concept. Again, here, I think it is not necessary to dwell so much because there's already a full-fledged presentation from BOCity, which is going to give insight on how this concept works. In conclusion, I would say that requisite policies and regulations are therefore increasingly developed across Sub-Saharan African and countries to improve solid waste management system, and which is embracing the circular economy model. But I'm also saying that Sub-Saharan African governments are already compelled by various treaties and the international agreements. And this also is a driver towards enabling them to adopt proper strategies that would ensure waste management is addressed properly. And that best practices are already here. The low-cost community-based enterprises that the region can emulate from. And there is also potential in solid waste management to grow innovative technologies. And that can create employment opportunities and wealth to improve African economy. I'm saying again that regionalism is a good platform to influence bilateral and multilateral sources of funding. And in Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, we already have the Lake Victoria Basin, River Nile Basin, Lake Chad Basin, all of which can be used as a favorable platform to address issues to do with solid waste management in the cities and in the region. To get to understand more about this presentation, I invite you to read the report that has already been prepared, and it's available on the CoM SSA website and titled Lessons on Recent Solid Waste Management Practices in Sub-Saharan Africa. And I think with that, I would end my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Harrison, for your presentation. As Harrison mentioned, we have a few examples from this study already now here with us. So I would now move on to our next speaker, Samuel Hinganavo from Bo City Council in Sierra Leone. Bo is the second largest city in Sierra Leone and one of the cities that piloted an integrated solid waste management model in 2013 onwards. Our speaker, Samuel, he is currently working for the Bo City Council Waste Management Department as the manager. He worked with Baltunga Railway as the focal person for Bo City Council in implementing a transformational pilot project, which was then rolled out to other cities in Sierra Leone, which we will hear more about from him shortly. Samuel has served as consultant for different activities on waste planning, setting up youth groups involved in waste collection, as well as a consultant for private companies and NGOs on waste management. Samuel holds a BSc in Environmental Sciences and a master's degree in Public Health from the Najala University in Sierra Leone. And he also has a postgraduate certificate in solid waste management from IHE UNESCO in the Netherlands. Samuel's presentation is also accompanied by Alfred Moana, who is part of one of the SMEs that was involved in the project in Sierra Leone. So yeah, without further ado, then here we have the presentation from Sierra Leone.
I'm Samuel Hinganavo, the manager for Waste Management Department, Bo City Council. I'm here to share my presentation with you and about past experience and knowledge gained land and implementing a solid waste management project for Bo City. And first, I'd like to share with you the dark days. I call this slide the dark days because this was how Bo looks like before the intervention of WHH or DFID in the reform in solid waste management. Initially, people used to dump waste in the center of streets. You see kids playing with waste and they were all happy living amicably with waste. And open burning and open dumping was the order of the day. You look around everywhere in the city, there were illegal dump sites all over the city. As you can see, medical waste and other waste, hazardous waste were all dumped within the city and the heart of the city. At the backyards of every household, there were illegal dump sites. Now, back in the days, as you can see, open burning, waste burning was the order of the day. There were no regulations. The knowledge of people were really down, and the perception, attitude, and practices of the people, they had no knowledge. Their perception was that open dumping was the best way to manage waste, and their attitude about waste management was in this particular mode. At that time, Bo City Council had only 2 lorries and 20 casual workers that were doing waste management within the city. Just imagine for a whole city, just with 2 vehicles. And they only cleared the central business district, and the central business district got the service. For the outskirts and the peripheries and household, there were no door-to-door household collection, and waste management at the outskirts was almost zero. Then came the dawn of the new beginning. In 2008, Bo City Council wrote its first project, and through UNDP, through DFID, and we got our first disposal sites 5 miles off the city. That was in 2008. And of course, trainings we have done for the BCC workers and basic health and safety practices we are taken into consideration, and people were started using slightly proper or relatively proper or better waste management practices. Of course, sensitization came into action, massive sensitization. At that time, even when the skips were available, you hardly see people go to dump their waste in the skip, except when we did proper sensitization using radio as parade, radio discussions, word to word or area to area sensitization. Then in 2013, here came the green solution, the beginning of a proper or effective waste management. At the start of the project in 2013, this was the mode of waste collection or disposal, waste management per se. From the household, you can see people were still burning waste, and some people took their waste to the skip location, especially using kids under the age of 18, mostly 10 to 15 years old kids normally take the waste to the disposal site. Then came the green solution, as I say. UK Aid supported the Bo City Council through WHH and an international NGO called Waste and One World Link. They supported the council to implement a project. Now, what's happened? We created an integrated waste management system for Bo City Council. What first thing we did was to create a waste management plan. This one will inform the council on how to where we are to go and how we are to go there. And also we created what we call operational policy documents, operational manual for the waste management departments. The project created a whole waste management department instead of a formal waste management unit that was run by only one administrative staff of the council and laborers. Now there is a whole department which was created to manage waste within the city with other administrative staff, about 10 people. And also, now for every point within the waste management and collection was done, we created a clean book, waste services for door-to-door collection, for transportation. We did it from skip location to the disposal sites, and also reuse and recycling came into action where we trained the SMEs for waste disposal. And also disposal was done at the final disposal site at this time now. Then again, BCC Waste Management Department's capacity building. The project supported the BCC Waste Management Department. As I said, this is the dawn of the new beginning and the green solution. We came up with regulations. We told people not to dispose their waste on the streets again, but if you tell someone not to dispose his waste, what will you do? You come up with alternative solutions. So we came up with cash bins and also the capacitated training facilities, of which I benefited, went to Holland and a few other staff to do training on solid waste management. And these are other facilities that we are brought in as a result of the project. Sanitation, paving the central markets, doing some market structures, and we came up with some sanitation kiosks all over the city, 8 sanitation kiosks. They are far more than just a public toilet because they are with shower facility, and yes, they sell sanitation products here as well. Now, waste transportation. As we say, we divided the city into different zones, and these zones, these youth groups we created, we divided them into the different zones. So the map out there will show you the different locations. At that time, we had different zones. You'll see that we had these transportation equipment for the youth groups, which they used to do waste collection and transportation. We have push carts, and we have tricycles and diners as well. And then the reform came, because when we brought in the diners, initially they had tricycles, but the project brought in 4 diners for the group. So we divided the whole city into 4 operational regions: Cleanbo, North, East, West, and South. And for every unit, the Cleanbo youth groups, these are the groups that we trained, capacitated them, and equipped them with different logistics for door-to-door waste collection. So they have their operational area. No one person will go into the operational area of the other person. But if you look at the center of the picture, you will see a white dot there. That's the central business district, which was left for just the waste management department. There also, door-to-door waste collection is 100%, and it's really effective. That's where also the department gets some amount of its money or revenue to run the departments and pay workers within the waste management departments as well as the youth groups that are doing their own collections at their different operational areas. Waste collection, the main achievements, of course, waste transportation system is really functional. It's totally functional and within the city, and door-to-door waste collection service is really effective, especially within the central business districts and also at the outskirts, which Cleanbo youth groups are doing, because that's the only group that's a private sector that are involved in waste collection and disposal. The main challenge is transportation cost is really intensive. We do get lots of breakdowns, especially the road to the disposal sites. It's really rough and rugged, which leads to plenty breakdowns often and again. And this is creating a serious problem, not only for the waste management department, but also for the youth groups that are involved in door-to-door waste collection. If we move to the next slide now, you'll see the current status of waste management within Bor City. Of course, as I'm talking, 10% of households being served on door-to-door collection by both the BCC and the Cleanbo services. And for the central business districts, we have 100% coverage, as I just said. Approximately 20 tons of waste is transported daily to the disposal site. And I know the city is producing far more than that. Still, there are some areas that are left unserviced, or still some people are doing flight tipping at a lower rate now. Given recovery and recycling SMEs, we have 22 businesses that's the project supported, and Alfred Banner will talk about that very soon. Project rollouts to 3 additional cities on demand. Because of the successes we attained here in Bo City, the project was we were called again to roll out these projects and the ideas and the best practices into other cities, of which we did, and it was really successful. Currently, other cities are benefiting from the same systems we used in Bo. You go to the next slide, you'll see reuse and recycling. With me here is one of the SMEs that benefited from the project and the project's capacitated in. He'll talk briefly on reuse and recycling. Over to you, Alfred Moana.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Alfred Moana. I'm one of the SMEs in Bo. First of all, as I told you, when waste management came in Bo City, the amount of waste at the illegal dump sites collected by them was about 27,000 tons. And we are obliged at least to recycle 80% of the waste that is being taken to the landfill side. That is what they told us to do. Plastic recycling as a whole was one of the challenges, plastic waste materials. So what the project did, they hired an expatriate from Cameroon, Samuel Upe, who came and trained us on plastic recycling, who trained us about charcoal briquetting of biodegradable waste materials into briquette charcoals that people will use in the community. And these charcoals also help in deforestation. So within the system now, we have 4 components that we have between. Now that I here, Alfred Moana, as chairman for West to West Entrepreneurs Associations, I saw it fits at least to impact this idea into cities within the country. Because we cannot only do it, but if we do it, it's like we are not doing anything else. So I was hired by WHH to train people in Kenema which is one of the cities, the tallest city in Sierra Leone, are 3 communities, polio opportunity training centers and other centers in Kenya on plastic recycling, biochar briquetting, apple stove fabrication out of scrap metal and council cycling. From there, I went to Freetown. I trained at Kulwaf, Cordball, Kokube. Many communities are covered almost the rural areas in Freetown. Okay, and when we talk about waste management entrepreneurships, we have 3 things that are in these entrepreneurships. One, it helps to minimize waste in the community, that is sanitation. Then second, it creates employment because the more you take people on productions of these waste materials, like plastic waste materials, then thirdly, it helps to create income generations within the community. So it is an alternative livelihood on waste management, recycling as a whole, as an element on waste management, and alternative livelihood for people in the communities. Although we have challenges, the only challenges that we are having for now is mechanized equipment that we need, and secondly, well, structures that will be meant for this waste materials. So as for now, this initiative is all over Sierra Leone now. So if they try to bring or to try to impact this initiative within another countries within the Western region, it will be very nice because I know other areas in the Western regions are not having this idea. So thank you very much for taking me in the presentation. So that is my experience I had.
Okay, as he said, one of the major challenges he has is the mechanization, to mechanize the equipment used for waste collection. Then if we go to the next slide now for the lesson learned, which is the final slide, of course, one thing we learned is that integrated solid waste management provides room for all sector players to share responsibilities and lower the burden on council. Of course, in as much as they are reducing the burden on council, it's also creating employment opportunities for CBOs and SMEs that are doing waste recycling and doing door-to-door waste collection. And of course, another lesson learned was policies and enforcement strategy. It's really, really critical. All this we are doing without effective policy and enforcement strategy, you will go back to the drain. You go back to the drain again. So what we did again, in as much as we went forward, we came back again and started doing proper policy and enforcement, of which we created a whole enforcement unit. We employed enforcement officers to do enforcement, because in Africa it's totally different. We use both the carrot and the stick approach. Another thing again is awareness and education is a continuous process. Every day, that's why as a council we have a normal Wednesday radio program, which is called Council Hour, 8 to 9. Every Wednesday, we go to the radio and sensitize the public about our operations and the do's and don'ts. Of course, again, another thing is waste characteristics volume changes over time. That is what we learned. The dynamics of waste. You need to study the dynamics of waste management, especially during the rains or during the dries, these specific things. Another thing, political will necessary to transform cities to adopt sustainable solutions. All this we are doing, there are times political interference is one of the major challenges we face, especially these politicians. There are times when you tend to enforce laws or regulations, then because of political reasons, they come to really bend the rules or try to bend the rules. So political will is really, really important, and they give you the platform and the stage for smooth operation and safe operation. And finally, what I want to say to you is that waste never waits. Everything about waste management is time-bound, so it should be effective, efficient, and appropriate. Once again, let's move to the final slide. I'll say thank you, thank you, thank you. You can visit our page on Operation Zero Waste. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Samuel and Alfred, for this presentation that really highlighted how both cities set up their waste management system from nearly scratch. And then it went on with partnerships with CBOs, youth groups, and SMEs, and then was also taken up in other cities across the country. Now we have the next presentation from UN Habitat. Well, one of the things when a city is starting their waste management projects is to conduct a waste audit, or just to understand what kind of waste is generated in the city, how should we deal with the kind of waste that is generated. So we have an input from UN Habitat from Now, who will talk a bit about this and one of the programs that they are working on to support cities in developing waste management projects. Now Takeuchi, she's a waste management expert from UN Habitat. She has been working with the waste sector for more than 7 years. In different countries and cities across Asia and Africa. She leads the waste team in UN Habitat, and she manages the program Waste-Wise Cities and African Clean Cities platform, which are global and regional knowledge sharing and project development platforms to tackle the waste crisis. She previously led the development of UN Habitat's Waste-Wise Cities tool, which is a tool to assess cities' solid waste management performance and plastic leakage through SDG indicator monitoring. She also works closely with the UN Environment Programme to tackle marine litter problems for waste management improvement in cities. So yeah, now we can have the presentation from Now and UN Habitat.
My name is Nao Takeuchi from UN Habitat, and I'm a waste management expert from Urban Basic Services section. Today, I would like to introduce Waste-Wise Cities and African Clean Cities platform, two programs under UN Habitat for the solid waste management. So first of all, I would like to introduce this global crisis of the waste management. So currently, 2 billion people are without waste collection services, 3 billion people without an access to controlled waste disposal. And if we go business as usual, 8 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emission is coming from the waste sector by 2025. So Waste-Wise Cities was launched by our executive director in 2018 on the Water Habitat Day as a call to action for the global crisis of the waste management. And at the moment, we have 200 member cities and almost 140 million inhabitants in total from different countries. And then they're benefiting from Waste-Wise Cities daily basis. And I also would like to introduce African Clean Cities platform. This is the regional chapter of Waste-Wise Cities, and then this is a heavily supported by government of Japan, Ministry of Environment in Japan. So we have a ACCP secretariat under Waste-Wise Cities of UN Habitat. We have a steering committee that is run by Ministry of Environment, Japan, UNEP, UN Habitat, Yokohama City, and JICA. And we would like to support the different African cities and countries for the capacity development and training on safe disposal of the waste using Fukuoka method, Waste-Wise Cities tool application for Waste-Wise Cities tool. I'm going to introduce it later. And then we would like to develop a bankable project in African countries. So these are the 4 action areas under the Waste-Wise Cities and African Clean Cities platform. And then we have knowledge and good practice sharing, waste data and monitoring, advocacy and education, project finance, and bankability support. And under the waste data and monitoring, we developed Waste-Wise Cities tool, which is based on the monitoring methodology of one of the SDG indicators related to municipal solid waste. And we developed this tool, and we are disseminating this tool as a tool to develop a project. Under the project finance and bankability support, basically, based on the data collected and then findings through the Waste-Wise Cities tool application, we identify the intervention areas and then try to facilitate engagement with the different partners, such as landfill and plastic waste, GIZ, JICA, and together with the member cities, we develop projects, bankable projects, but for solid waste management improvement. So this is a Waste-Wise Cities tool, which is kind of a central tool for Waste-Wise Cities and African Clean Cities platform. And this is developed based on the SDG indicator 11.6.1, proportion of municipal solid waste collected and managed in control facilities out of total municipal solid waste generated by the city. Basically, this is how much of the waste is properly managed in your city. And then this tool basically can identify and quantify all these different parameters to really estimate that thing. And then this can also used as a rapid assessment tool that evaluates cities' municipal solid waste management performance, and it also supports cities and countries to report their own progress towards achieving the different SDG indicators, namely municipal solid waste and food waste and recycling rate. So how does a Waste-Wise Cities tool help your city? Basically, this will assess municipal solid waste generated, collected, and treated in control facilities. And also this data can provide you some identification on the municipal solid waste recovery chain, and then it's acted while engaging them in an inclusive and a participatory way. It also checked the environmental control level of a municipal solid waste management facilities, establish better waste and resource management strategies that create business and livelihood opportunities, provide data for large waste management infrastructure investment cases to municipal corporations, waste stakeholders and investors. And then this will help cities to develop projects and fund mobilization with the evidences. This is an example from Nairobi of the result of the Waste Cities 2 application. So as you can see, in Nairobi, 3,000 tons per day is generated, and then about 1,600 tons per day is collected and somehow reaching to the dump site. However, almost 500 tons per day is uncollected, hanging around in the slum areas, in low-income areas. And then based on these data, we also identified the city plastic leakage, which is about 4 kg per person per year is leaking to the water systems. So based on this data, we conducted the Nairobi local stakeholders workshop, inviting collection companies, recycling companies, and CBOs, youth groups who are engaged in street cleaning, waste picker groups, and so on, to really discuss what should be really done to improve the solid waste management in Nairobi. And then we also did the same thing in Mombasa, which is almost equivalent to every single person in Mombasa is throwing the half-liter of PET bottle into the ocean every single day. So we also convened this Mombasa local stakeholders workshop to identify key intervention areas with the stakeholders. And currently what we are doing is to develop projects in both in Mombasa and Nairobi. The challenges identified in both Mombasa and Nairobi both the first one is quite a lot of waste is still uncollected. So the priority is a waste collection expansion scheme, especially in the low income and informal settlements. So this is kind of the idea that we are now developing, turning into the small patches of dumping sites into transfer stations, which will be organized and then managed by CBOs who are collecting the waste at the moment from the different districts, from the slums and low-income areas. And then we would like to turn these CBOs into social enterprise who can manage this business. And through this, we also would like to involve an EPR scheme to establish a new financial flow to social enterprise. So basically, the producers pay the take-back scheme being done by the CBOs for the waste collection. So this is a kind of the project that we are developing at the moment in Mombasa and Nairobi. And then also we identified quite a bit of infrastructure investment such as MRF is needed both in Mombasa and Nairobi. So through that, we are now engaging with the private sectors through this local stakeholders. We invited lots of private sectors in the local enterprises here, and then having a really close discussion with them. And then we are trying to develop a project to establish MRF, harnessing the existing knowledge and expertise from private sectors. And basically, we're trying to get some arrangement where private sectors investments can be done on public land. And then under the ACCP, I also would like to introduce some case study on the safe landfill management using Fukuoka method. So this was done under the ACCP project, and Fulene dump site, which is in Maputo in Mozambique, had a landslide where killed several people. So the Japanese government came in there and then turned this dump into more safely managed landfill site using Fukuoka method. So as you can see, the slope was rehabilitated now, and there's no threat for the landslides anymore. And then you can also see the leachate pond here. So these are kind of the Waste-Wise Cities and African Clean Cities platform are still very young initiatives. However, we would like to expand this efforts into different cities and countries all over the world and also through Africa. So if you would like to interested in joining Wastewise Cities and African Crisis Platform, please contact with me, or like just Google Wastewise Cities, and then you can find the letter of intent that you can sign and then submit so that you can be the part of the platform and the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you now for the presentation. So it did address how cities can benefit from different tools and partnerships with other organizations and other initiatives across the region. I would invite you to kindly share your questions or comments in the chat so we can address them. For the French speakers, please feel free to also share your questions in French. And we will try to address them to the extent that we can. As I will take some moderator privileges and ask the first question before it comes from the chat. It comes from Wilfred Meyer, who's asking, I think this is a question from Harrison. I would invite also the speakers to turn on their videos so we can see them, Harrison, Samuel, and now. So the question is for Harrison, which is on the Mukuru model, which was in Nairobi, the dump site. You highlighted this practice, which was started almost 20 years ago. So where has this initiative reached today?
Thank you very much for that question. Mukuru Recycling Center to date is now a project that is running on its own, and it's like a private business that is meeting all the requirements such as licensing, the regular licensing, as any other private business now in the waste management sector. In other words, it's not a formal business like any other waste management and recycling business in any other part of the world.
Thanks, Harrison. Maybe then I would have a question if Samuel is still around. Perhaps, Samuel, you can turn on your camera so we can see you. We had a question on youth groups in Sierra Leone when you were working with these projects with the Clean Boy youth groups. You mentioned that the youth groups were incentivized. So we were curious if there is a business model that was used by the youth groups and which made this engagement with the youth group sustainable over time.
Come again, you said what? The model.
Yeah, so you mentioned that the youth groups that were involved in this Clean Bow project, they were incentivized. So we are trying to understand if there was a business model that was behind how the youth groups were working.
Well, currently we are not incentivized. What's happened? The projects identified these unemployed youth, mobilized them, and we did a careful selection, after which the projects trained them, capacitated them, give them startup kits and gears, and the projects let them to work for themselves. And they were doing it collections, and they were paying themselves. They have bank accounts, and they have financial management system. They were given all these sorts of training. They are not incentivized on the monthly or weekly or yearly basis per se. We just give them a startup kits and startup resources, and after that we left them on their own. In fact, they were paying so the waste management department again as fees or license for operations within the city.
Right. Thanks, Samuel. And actually, just following on that, you also mentioned in your presentation that the CBD area was still managed by the Waste Management Department, and that this led to a bit of revenue creation also for the Waste Management Department in the city. Did you also, as a result of this pilot project, did the city also change their regulations on waste management, and did you find that the city administration supported your interventions?
Of course, yes, the Waste Management Department is an arm of the council, the city administration, and when we divided the city into the 4 regions, we left the central business district, which was being managed by the waste management department. The waste management department also is involved in door-to-door waste collection, just to raise revenue, because the department is also generating own source revenue for its operation per se. Yeah. So like the city administration, they gave us the permission and they gave us the authority. And in fact, it's the waste management department that gives the license or operational area to any other private sector that wants to operate within the city. So I think for the central business district, we left it for ourselves as the lead operators in waste management, at least for our own revenue generation as well. Yeah.
Right. Thanks a lot, Samuel. Maybe I have a short question for now, since you introduced the Waste by Cities tool. Maybe we can hear a bit more from you on how cities can access this tool and what needs to be in place for a city to be able to use this tool.
Thank you, Kruti, for the question. And then, so the Waste by Cities tool, especially on English version, is already uploaded and then published on our Waste by Cities website and also UN Habitat's publication page. So you can download it, and then also this is accompanied with the data collection Excel application. So you can also download that and then submit the data through that platform, and then you can get automatically the data for the calculation and validation from UN Habitat. And then we are planning to develop online course on how to apply the Waste by Cities tool, and then also how to use this data to really strategically plan the solid waste management in your city. And we are planning to really launch that online course in June this year. So the more capacity building is going to be happening. And then we also would like to apply this Waste by Cities tool in different cities through different sources of funding. So yeah, it'll be great if we can also get the more cities on board so that we can disseminate this tool and then help cities to achieve the SDG goals related to waste management.
Thank you. For the French speakers, I will just quickly summarize Now's answer so you can see it on the subtitles. UN Habitat is working on a few trainings for the Waste by Cities tool, which will be available starting in June. And also the tool is available also with an Excel sheet on the Waste by Cities platform, which you can access. The next question is from Sarmat Qureshi, who asks that the case studies were focused around major cities or bigger cities. What initiatives are in place in smaller conurbations? Maybe I can get Harrison to speak to this, because we did include smaller cities and projects in the case study. So maybe you can talk about this.
The case study, thank you very much for that question. The case study is based on not in bigger cities, actually. They are all focused on secondary cities. And the reason for choosing on those in secondary cities is because in bigger cities, the problem is already overflown, and the magnitude is so high that for you to penetrate, you need to start somewhere that is still smaller, and then that gives you something that now can be replicated in bigger cities based on demand. But it's like you want to throw a stone in the ocean and you want to see the impact of it. I'd rather you went into a pond and throw that stone, and the pond will fill it, and everything will see how the impact of throwing a stone in the pond is. Then you can now take it over to the bigger cities and make it work well. So the essence here is, how can you create a platform that everybody can learn so quickly, and then create demand? And that can only happen in secondary cities.
Thanks, Harrison, for that answer. We have a question in French. I will do a quick thanks to our colleagues for quick translation. And this question would be, I think, best answered by Samuel from Sierra Leone. The question is that is waste management a competence which is transferred to the municipalities in Bo City? And was there a role also of the state or the national government in implementing waste management in Bo?
The states, the national government has its function, especially in formation of policies, regulation. They regulate all waste management activities. That's the Ministry of Health and Sanitation. They have the principal function of regulating formation of policies, roadmaps, etc., etc. That's why, and they have a national waste management plan as well as the Bo City Council. We also have our own local waste management plan, and so that's the relationship between the central government and the council. But according to the Local Government Act of 2004 and Act of Parliament, it states that the council, it gives the councils the leverage, the mandates to manage waste within its locality, and also for all other developmental functions within the locality as well. So that's why waste management activities is the principal function. It's one of the principal function, if not the principal function of any city council within Sierra Leone as well, because more than 50% of its budget almost goes to, especially from the OZOs, goes to waste management activities. That's why we give a lot of premium to waste management. But generally, the central government, they do support the city councils again as well. Like very recently, they distributed lorries or trucks, waste compactor trucks and skip loaders to the different councils, which was given to Sierra Leone by the Chinese government, and as well. And also they do support, especially in financial support, they do disburse monies to the councils to support the management of waste. Is the question answered?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Samuel. I will summarize your answer in English, but the subtitles will show up in French for our French-speaking colleagues. So Samuel has just said that they work also with the ministry at the national level, at the Ministry of Health and Sanitation. So at the national level, there is a national waste management plan. But at the same time, the Bo City Council also has a local waste management plan. The national government, there are laws that give the competence or the power to the municipality to take actions on solid waste. But at the same time, the national government also provides overarching laws and legal support, as well as financial assistance to the cities and municipalities. So it's a bit of a mix in terms of competences in municipalities. Thank you, Samuel. If there are further questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. In the meantime, maybe another question for now, as we wait for colleagues to put in more questions. You mentioned towards the end this project in Mozambique with the Fukuoka landfill method. Maybe for some of our cities and colleagues joining us on the call, if you could kindly share what the Fukuoka method is, and maybe in some simple words, and why it is considered a good practice.
Yeah, thank you very much for this is a great question. I didn't actually go into the more technicality about the Fukuoka method due to the time constraints, but the Fukuoka method is first developed in the city of Fukuoka in Japan, when Japan was also facing the similar challenges in the solid waste management in 60s and 70s. And then Japan has got the small lands, and then we couldn't really find where the land is, the landfill site, and so so we have to really extend the life of the landfill site, and then the waste can be decomposed faster if it is ventilated nicely. So the chunk of the waste, the cell of the waste cell it's ventilated and then oxidized. If they get the more oxygen in there, the decomposition work faster. And then also once the decomposition work faster, then the leachate coming from the cell is also less polluted. Which means the BOD level is very lower than compared to the anaerobic dump site. So that is kind of the thing was found through the collaboration between Fukuoka University, Fukuoka City, and then civil society at that time. And then that was disseminated as a kind of one technology, the standard technology all over Japan. And so what is done in the Fukuoka method is basically try to do some ventilation, rain collector ventilation pipes put into the waste cell. And then these kind of constructions can be done quite low cost using a local material. So this is very, very affordable technology that can be adopted by any cities in Africa as well. And then that also is proven to reduce the GHG emission from the landfill site compared to the open dump sites. So this is kind of methodology, and this can be also useful for the collapsed dump site to be rehabilitated, because you can also put this ventilation pipes inside the landfill. You actually can start decomposition nicely, and then this can be used as a methodology together with the rehabilitation and the slope. So that is a kind of a general overview of the Fukuoka method. So it has an benefits in affordability and a GHG emission, and then also you can have a less polluted leachate from this construction methodology.
Thanks a lot now. I will attempt to summarize briefly for the French speakers, but please pardon me if I say some technical words wrongly. But the Fukuoka method is a method that was started in Japan, which helps to extend the life of a landfill site. It has different methods of ventilation pipes which support oxidation within the landfill, but the outcome is that it is more affordable. It is low cost using local material, affordable technology. It reduces the GHG emissions, so the carbon emissions from waste that are usually quite high. And also the leachate that comes out from the landfills is less polluted. But I hope the automatic translation got some of that right. In any case, I will see if there's any other questions coming in on the chat, but I think not. Well, if there are no more questions, but I still invite you to share any comments or reflections you have. Otherwise, we will move to closing shortly. And now has also shared a reference on the Fukuoka method for those who are interested in reading more and understanding how this works. Thank you, now. All right. I see no more questions, comments coming in from the colleagues, so I think we can move towards closing the webinar. I would like to thank you all again for joining us, for listening through the hour, especially to our French speakers who stayed through the hour, although we were speaking in English. I would like for my colleague Adelaide to share a quick link in the chat for feedback. So when we are doing more of these webinars in the future, we can learn from your experiences and your suggestions. With that, I would close. Kindly please take a few minutes of your time to give us feedback on this webinar, and we will have more such events through the CoMSA help desk and secretariat in the future. So I invite you to be updated with our social media and subscribe to our newsletter, which will always have events and upcoming notifications. With that, thank you very much for joining, and I hope to see you all soon again.
Thank you very much, Kruti, for the initiative. Well done. Thank you.